this is Jenny. I am going to share a couple cards that I created for Creativation back in January, and I'm going to share them because at the time these die panels had not come out yet in the store, and so I can share them now, as well as the little tiny scripty word dies. So I'm going to make two cards, both of them using two of these new panel dies, and they also come with a border on each of the dies, and they're sized to cut out perfectly for a A2 size card. I'm going to use two different mediums on each of the cards. I'm going to use expanding mousse on this first card, and I thought what I was going to do was to do a background with the expanding mousse, and then I'll cut it out afterwards using that panel die. So the expanding mousses is they're kind of like the regular embellishment mousse. They go on very similarly. They're real creamy and they have a shimmery effect, and you can leave them like that and they'll dry just the same. Or you can heat them up, and when you heat them up they get this sort of distressed look, and it becomes real dimensional, and kind of the thicker you have it on, the thicker the dimension is, and it gets on, it becomes dull in color but real textured. And I thought it would be a neat addition to have that quality with the just the pattern of the background panel die. So I used Boatyard Blue and Misted Mauve there, and what I've found with these is that really you do need to put it on fairly thick, and obviously the thicker, the longer it takes to dry or to heat up with a heat tool and get that embossed or that sort of distressed three-dimensional look. But it it depends. If you don't do it, it kind of tends to crack if you don't do it thick enough, if that makes sense. So you just kind of have to play around with the thickness. So I've got my heat gun pretty warm. It needs to be pretty hot because this is obviously a good bit to heat up here. So you can see how it starts to turn dull, and it kind of will crack, and it turns, it's kind of interesting. It's like the backwards of embossing powder. It looks kind of powdery, and then it gets shiny when it's heated up, and this starts out shiny and it kind of gets dull when it heats up, and it gets this sort of bubbled up look, and it's really neat. It's really interesting. It'd be great to do. I need to get out like the gold and use it as a texture for sand for like a beach card or something. I think would be cute. So that is, I've got my Easy Clean mat there that I'm keeping clean. That's what it looked like close up. And now I'm going to use this panel die. It is the classic Quatrefoil, and it's got sort of the scalloped edge around the background. And I'm going to use this pearlescent card to mount it on for my card base. Or mount that on the card base. So I'm just cutting it down to size, and it's just the white sort of pearlescent. It's real subtle. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut out the die from this die panel. Actually, what I do is I use that die to cut out that pearlescent card. I think I was still waiting on this to the expanding mousse to dry a bit. I'm going to run that through the tangerine and get out that one little piece. And at the time I thought I might just use just the large piece, but I end up using the large piece and the outside frame piece too. Okay, so now I'm going to lay my tile die on the expanding mousse piece and run it through. And I mean, it's a workout because it's pretty thick, and the tangerine does a great job of cutting it out, but it's I got my workout that day. All right, now I'm going to set that aside. I actually ended up doing two of these because at first I thought I was going to cut them all out. I wanted it to be, just the whole lacy piece. And then I decided to actually leave some of the pieces of the little tiles, little sort of quatrefoil pieces in, and that way I would have something to use to pop it up on some dimension. Okay, so I'm going to run that back through again, and I do have to do it a couple times. Now, I probably could have used a shim and that would have just gone through the first time. It did, it needed a couple times because that really is almost an extra layer of card, you know, just on top of it with that, and because it's like uneven a little bit, and so, anyway. All right, I'm going to start to poke some of those out, and then I kind of set it aside, and I'm going to begin using the medium for my next card. You don't need to see all of that mess. Okay, for the next card, I'm going to use some of the Nuvo watercolor cardstock, watercolor paper, and I'm going to use a couple of the shimmer powders to create sort of a watercolor washed background. I decided to use this Atlantis Burst and the Green Parade. So they're kind of two different colors of the green. The Atlantis Burst is a little bit more turquoise, or kind of a little bit more bluish, and there's more of the yellow for the Green Parade one. And I just sprayed down my watercolor card there really pretty well. And then I add the powder on top of that. Now, if you add the powder, you know, when it's more dry and then mist it on top of that, it gets a lot more of the sort of individual kind of little specks of powder that are different colors. But I wanted a pretty like watercolored washed look to it. And so I'm just going to mess around with that and dab up some of the paint, add more powder, and then add more water, and kind of just keep doing that until I like it. The shimmer powders are pretty amazing, and I can't imagine it ever going through an entire bottle. I mean, you don't even have to squeeze it. In fact, you should never squeeze it. I just literally take the top off and barely tap it, and just a teeny little bit goes a long, long way. So that is dried now. It's got some nice puddling on it, and I'm going to run it through the tangerine using the other panel die, and it's called Sunflower Array. And it also has a border that's kind of a more kind of scallopy border, and then the panel itself are the sort of the flowers. Okay, so I'm going to run that through. Obviously, that one goes through a lot easier because of the it's not as thick, and I think I do both of those pieces since I've got it out, and I've got it, you know, an extra piece of it. And you can see the edge there, sort of a deckled edge kind of around that. And I don't think I used the border piece on that one. So what I had planned to do was to do basically the same thing, pop some of the pieces out and not all of them. And then both of the cards will have a different sentiment on it. The different, one will say hello and one will say thanks. And both of those sort of scripty word dies. And they both have an outline. All right, I'm going to use my Tim Holtz craft pick to pop all or most of these out. And it does take a little while. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty intricate, and you know, I'm a little OCD, so I think I just had to go ahead and pop them all out, at least at this point. There is a, I've seen somebody use a tool that's like a, it looks like a lint brush. I've seen somebody use a regular lint brush. And then I've also seen somebody use another tool that I think We Are Memory Keepers makes that is kind of, it looks kind of like a lint brush, and you just rub it over the back of it and it pulls all the pieces out. For something like this that's really intricate, it is, it would be a big time saver. Normally, obviously, you know, this would not take as long. Honestly, now I can't remember whether I take the, whether I take them all out or not. I know I don't show it all, but I do, I can't remember whether I did do the other one differently. At any rate, that's enough of that. I'm going to mount that on to a piece of pattern paper. Okay, that's kind of what that looked like. but I'm going to do it again. And this time I'm going to be a little bit more selective about what pops out or what I do pop out. All right, so I'm going to tape that down to make sure it doesn't move because I want to get that same edge in there, or the border, and run it through. And I mean, it shifted the camera. It's such a workout. I can't imagine trying to do that. I mean, the tangerine is really hefty, and so I'm not sure that I would want to try this like with my big shot, maybe even. So at any rate, I'm gonna pop those out a little bit, and I'm going to use the other one for a card too. And I do save some of those that I'm going to pop back in later. But you can see I didn't want to pop out as many as I did on that first panel piece because of the because I wanted to have more places to put some dimensional dots, adhesive dots. All right, clean that up a bit. And now I'm going to take the card that I have, the pearlescent card, that's the border, and I'm going to use it and the card to kind of keep it in place. And I'm going to, and then I've got my green card there. And I'm going to try to decide what I'm going to do with the die for the word die. I thought I might use this mirror card, but it was so shiny, and it just kind of, it didn't really go with the kind of rough texture and the muted colors of this, of the expanding mousse. So I decided to grab some of these glitter markers, and they are, I've got 3 colors that I think they all 3 came in a pack together. There's Blue Bliss, Silver Mist, and the Imperial Blue. And I think I end up using the Imperial Blue and the Silver and layer those on top of each other to cut out with this thanks die. And so I just colored the length of this die in both of those colors, and then I'll use that to die cut it out. And I'm going to use the border piece there, the sort of outline piece, and cut it out of vellum. All right, I'm trying to figure out how much of it I need to use. This is the Imperial Blue. It's really pretty. It's sort of a deep kind of navy color, almost like but it's got a little bit of purplish kind of color into it. And so I'm just going to kind of go back and forth of that and just really make it, I mean, I didn't really pay attention to how consistent it was or whether I covered all of it or not, because you can't see that much out of it. The little tiny thanks die is very small. It's a very delicate piece. And then you've got the big background piece for the border, which I used vellum for. I thought I might use the silver, but I really didn't want to cover up too much of the background since I worked that hard on that that die panel. I'm finding it very hard to speak today. Okay, so I'm going to grab my die cut machine and I'm going to cut out the border from vellum on both of the pieces. So I've got this thanks, and then there's a hello, and there's several different sets of those. I think one says with love. I think one says celebrate, the thanks, hello, and there might be another one that says love. No, there was the with love. I can't remember which one it says. But they're really neat. And I love being able to have that background outline piece. It gives you so many options to use, maybe like glitter cardstock or vellum like I used, or something else painted, or some other piece that you could, come up with. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out the glitter piece, or the glitter marker I just did, and I'm going to do that twice because I'm going to layer those pieces on top of each other. I just wanted a little bit of the shadow from the blue, and then I'll have the silver on top. So there's the vellum piece and the thanks on top of it. Now I'm going to add the one back over the blue, run it through again, and then that will be done. Okay. I can't remember whether I decided to go through it. And it's great because it's got the little pokey holes to that make it real easy to get out. And like I said, it is really delicate. So I like the way that border looked, and then popping out that silver just kind of went with the pearlescent real nice. Okay, so I get really up close here. And I'm going to use the Smooth Precision pen to glue the die onto. I could have used a paintbrush, but obviously this is what the pen is good for. It's just put a little bit of little dots on the back of the whole thing, and I'm going to glue it onto the vellum border. And even though I used my tweezers, I did get it all over the place. And it dries clear, so you can't really tell. And you'll see in a second, I decided to think I'm going to get smart by smushing the top of it and really rubbing that down and making sure it adheres. And a piece of the glue stuck from the color and didn't come out. So that was fun. Luckily, that was the layer I had planned to put underneath. So now I'm going to use the silver on top of it. So it didn't really matter that the blue was underneath there. Okay. All right. So now that that's there, I'm going to set that aside. Actually, I didn't. I'd used this. It's the sort of embossing tool, and it's got the big sort of big ball on the one side. I think that's the medium one, and that was really good. It helped kind of push it, press those together and make sure they were adhered well. Okay, you can see all the pop dots I put on the back of that, and I'm going to pull those off. So I've got the back adhered to the I've got the bottom piece adhered to the card base, and then this border with the inset piece of the expanding mousse on top of it, so that it's raised up and you can still see the pearlescent piece behind it, pearlescent card behind it. And then what I decided to do was take some of my little leftover pieces that came out of that, and I'm going to pop in some of the pieces down below to give a better contrast underneath the thanks word. And luckily they fit perfectly with some of the little tiny pop dots. And then I'm going to use my little craft pick to just make sure they're all on the same level. And that will give me something to glue the vellum to, as well as kind of provide a contrast underneath it that it needed. I think I add one more. Alrighty. I'm going to glue that down again using the Smooth Precision pen, and set some blocks on top of it to weigh it down and set it aside to dry. Alright, then I'm going to get on to the next sentiment for the next card. And for that one, I decided to use the watercolor pencils from Nuvo, and I colored a little tiny piece of the of some watercolor card in the pink and purple. This was the paper I had intended to use behind it, or as the sort of base, that pink pattern paper. I believe it's from I think it's a Dear Lizzie collection from American Crafts that's several years old, but I liked the way that looked, and I ended up using a different piece of paper. It's very similar in color, but I think it had more pattern on it. So I'm going to grab the pink and purple watercolor pencils, and I'm just going to scribble across the same kind of way I did with the pens, except this, with the pencil, and try to blend them out a little bit, and then add water to make a nice little wash that I'm going to use to cut out the hello. And I just did it one time. Those dies look really good when you stack them up together, and I I have done that since then, but I have, this, this was actually the first time I had used those. So I really, I hadn't done that yet, and I just used this one, one thickness of it on top of the vellum. All right, so I'm going to make sure that's dry, and I'm going to cut it out off camera, I believe. Yes, there it is. I really like the way it kind of looked, the negative portion of it. I think I saved that for something else, but it wasn't going to look right on this card. All right, I'm going to do the same thing, adhere it down with the glue pen, and then pop it onto the front of that. You can see I did pick out all of the pieces of that entire panel. That took a little while, but it's very therapeutic for somebody with a little OCD. And I have to apologize, I did not actually have the very end piece of this video. I don't know what happened to it. So you don't actually see me glue the card down to the base. I have no idea what happened to it, but anyway, I'm gonna cut that white piece down. So I'm just going to use the pink as the border on the outside, and then the white card will be underneath the green die panel, and then this will be, and then the sentiment will be on top. And like I said, it'll be a different piece of paper, the pink paper, but it's pretty much the same color, so it'll match that, this word sentiment still. And I pretty much cut it out to be exactly the same size. And I did not use that border. I just left that deckled edge the way it was. And then I adhere all of that to a card front, a card base. Oh, actually I did, I think I used a piece of fun foam on the back of the white paper just to provide a little bit of dimension too. I started to use the Smooth Precision pen and just go over little pieces of it, and then I decided that was going to take forever, and I wanted to make sure it stuck down, so I used the medium glue pen, which has more of like a chisel tip, and that got plenty of glue on there, and then I just wiped it up off the Easy Clean mat. And I think this is pretty much where you can see that's the other piece of paper that I ended up using in the end. And there's my little piece of fun foam, and then that's where the video cuts out. I'm sorry, but you can see the final product here in the photographs. That's the way it turned out there, which I thought was really pretty. I added some of the sequins that are perfect size for the middle part of those little sunflowers. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I appreciate everybody's comments and feedback. I hope you come back for another video, or give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this one. I've got a lot of the new Woodland Walk and the latest kit, craft kit I'm going to play with. So I did want to share this video since it was sort of a labor of love, but I'll be back with a new one soon. Thanks so much. Bye.